So
stand-ups. Maybe in a good arcade, you'd find a Big Blue every now and then, that
mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Nice. So in these discussions, and I've never recorded or ever, but I ask a lot about Toronto history. So I always ask you about stuff, and you're always answering. And I'm always asking Brett and Josh and you know, back when Fareed was around, I asked him about the history. For myself, I don't know. I don't ever think. I always assumed that you guys just knew me and didn't have anything to wonder, because I've showed up, you know, pretty much, after you guys. So you guys have pretty much known me since I started playing. Was there ever anything that you ever wondered about me?
No, not really. I think because again, remember 2000 to 2010, we just wanted people to, or at least the ST heads, those less than a handful of players. We just wanted people to play the game, and so we were kind of like, I wouldn't say desperation is a word, but we just felt like, well, if he wants to play, then yeah, sure, come play.
Oh, so that's how that's how you guys saw me, eh?
Yeah, because yeah, it was. I mean, I think it was around like what 2006, 2007.
Yeah, around there.
Like, yeah, you know what? It's a dead game, Super Turbo. No one really wants to put any time into it, so it was what it was, and so it was just kind of like me at that point, just going to the tournaments, supporting the scene. Just throw my hat into CBS2, just whatever. It was what it was, and yeah, and if people wanted to play Super Turbo, like the odd guy that actually wanted to put in the game and say, yeah, sure, come play with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was actually originally looking just play online anyway, because I started from Puzzle Fighter, and I always say the reason why I started Street Fighter is because the Puzzle Fighter community died.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that Damdai did 2DF. I don't know how true that is.
I think he did. He was the guy who really don't know if he coded it or he pushed it.
Mm-hmm.
I do know he had a lot to do with it. I suppose that would be a question for Damdai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
He was a big part of making a online, like, quote unquote legit.
mm-hmm. Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because he was competing online and offline, like, way back in the day. Like, he's if my memory is correct, like, he started around 2007,
Mm-hmm.
like around the same time as say Afro Legends started.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been around, and like he was going to offline events, but at the same time he was pushing the online platform, like trying to get people to play this game, and
Mm-hmm.
it worked. So yeah, so many people started ST online. I think it was because of 2DF.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So this is my perspective of 2DF. So when I I'm just always interested in like technology and stuff like that. And sometime around high school, and this is before I met you guys, so probably like 2000, I don't know, 2002, 2003 maybe. uh, GGPO like just came out, absolute beta, and there was these articles around like tech news about the online, the online netcode, and how it's the only way to play online competitively and whatnot. But at that time, it was really buggy, and it was only one game, Alpha 2. And that's actually why I even sort of play Alpha 2 even a little bit, because I dabbled in it at one point just to try out GGPO. And it was horrible. And I remember reading on the forums, like, Ponder was still trying to figure stuff out. Like, the for some of you it might be really bad, maybe because I'm overestimating your bandwidth and stuff like that. So you're still trying to like do some tweaks. But it didn't really work well for me. I sort of started away maybe to come back to it later, and I never really did. And I always played by myself, right? I really loved Puzzle Fighter. My brother had the game for DOS, or he borrowed discs from a friend or something like that for DOS, on the 486, and I played a lot there. That was my first exposure to Puzzle Fighter. And then
Learning the game,
yeah,
etc. Yeah.
yeah, and I played the CPU out. You can get really good at that game playing against the CPU. but eventually I just got bored, right? Because like you can only play the CPU so many times. Once you've unlocked all the unlockables, you've beaten the CPU at the hardest difficulty and master mode and everything. It's like, okay, what else is there? You got to play humans, right?
Right.
And I remember at one point, at school, somebody sort of were familiar, but he was like nothing, right? Like he did the scrub beating strategy that I show people now, which I knew how to handle that, and he was surprised that I could win. He was so confident that that he would beat me. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. It's like, I've seen this before.
Yeah, so I started searching like online, like what is there a way to play Puzzle Fighter online, right? There has to be, right? That's how I found 2DF. And 2DF, there was actually a decent community of Puzzle Fighter players, at least a few hundred, and there was a ranking, of course. Damn Dai seems to love his rankings. If he developed 2DF, I'm assuming he did, but there was a ranking system, and it was great. It was fun. It gave people sort of motivation to challenge each other, play, get better, and I just had to make small tweaks to my play to be competitive against humans. It took me maybe 2 or 3 days just sort of reviewing my matches. And back then, 2DF, the replay system was actually really good. You could watch at double speed, triple speed. You can fast forward and rewind. So it's actually really useful. I'm not sure why Flightcade can't do that, or GGPO couldn't do that, or how all these modern online, they can't do that, which just baffles me, because it was such a good feature and such a useful feature. But it only took me about 2 or 3 days to figure out, oh, okay, so that's what these guys are doing. And it was just small changes to be competitive. And very quickly I climbed up the rankings, and the rankings, oh my gosh, the Chinese are unbeatable at Puzzle Fighter. They are absolutely unbeatable. So here was like the top, 100 and let's say 20 people. How that looked like rankings. 100 to like 120-ish was just all Chinese flags.
Wait, 100 to 120.
Yeah.
Like never mind the top 100.
Like top 100 at least.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
And
120.
yeah, like one to 100 to 120. It fluctuated a little bit depending on how active people were and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's just only Chinese flags completely. And the gap between them and the next people afterwards was so big. Like so the three people below that was like me, Jinrai from like West, whatever. I think he plays Third Strike now a lot, actually. But
He used to. He played Third Strike back in the day too. I think I played a few times against him when he came to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I love to meet that guy. I think he's a teacher, actually.
right.
Yeah, I love to meet that guy.
Back in the day too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so me, Jinrai, and then some other person from like Mexico or something like that. And so when we would play against the Chinese, it would be like 10 to 1 or 10 to 2. Right? When we played each other, it was like, 5-5 generally. But then if we played anybody else below, like even the next, like the fourth or fifth player below us, it was like 10-2 the other way. We would win 10 and the other person would win like 2. So that's sort of how big the skill gap was between the groups. And it was just us trying to figure out, what do the Chinese know that we don't? And I think I figured some of it out over the years, but I haven't had a chance to play the Chinese to sort of figure that out. I've been playing a lot of Mexicans, and they've gotten really good. Yeah. But I haven't. It's unfortunate that the Chinese don't go on Fightcade. I want to like test myself against those guys now.
Yeah, maybe it's blocked because I think they use a different platform. They use X Zone, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're probably on that.
And I have tried a couple of times on X Zone, and I do okay. It's not as bad as I remember. So maybe there are more scrubs now in China, or maybe I've gotten better. One or the other. I like to believe I've gotten better.
There's really only one way to find out. It's like fight. It's like that's why one of the things because that's good about Fightgate. Like you get to play the good players, like the really good players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, and you're not bound by geography or yeah, you're probably somewhat bound by the connection. But
And actually, Puzzle Fighter, it's not that timing like strict, right? It's a puzzle game, right? And the arcade version, you're capped at how fast you can drop pieces. So, like you can only hold down, and there's no insta drop, which insta drop ruins the game. So I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal if there was lag. But then 2DF shut down. The Puzzle Fighter community just collapsed, and I was like, okay.
That might be a good thing to talk with Damdai about, like for a future episode, if you could get in touch with him. Because I'm pretty sure, like, I know he had a big part to do with it. Like, because I don't know the details because I wasn't gaming that much online back in the day. Like, I hardly, if at all. So I just kind of hear rumbles about like 2DF. Like, the most online gaming I did was like Chilera, and that was with hyper fighting.
Mm-hmm.
That was even before 2DF.
Oh, so, yeah, I remember Chilera. Yeah. And I remember people, my audio was spiking. I'm going to turn mine down a little bit. But yeah, I remember Chilera, and I remember I messed with that a little bit too, and I remember it was really laggy. What I loved about Chilera, though, was 4-player versus series, and you told me you never tried that.
No, I don't think I even heard about it until after the platform died.
That was so fun. That was so fun. Yeah, four players in a room. Each player controls a character, but you can't control. Only the person in control can choose when to swap. The most you can do is you press the swap button, and it'll put a message on the screen, tag requested.
Right.
And like if they tag you in at a bad time, and you just get infinite. That was so awesome.
Yeah, to be honest, they need to bring that back. Like I'm actually surprised that Capcom didn't try that for any of their ports for the modern gen.
Mm-hmm.
I should say the current generation consoles, because they came out with the Marvel anthology, right? That had Marvel superheroes and MVC1. I'm surprised they didn't throw that in there, like especially with MVC1.
Yeah, that'd be so awesome. That's a great party game.
Yeah.
Just like raw tagging your partner in.
Exactly.
And watching him get infinite.
Yeah.
Oh.
Again, that kind of thing we could probably delve into and like do some research and delve into another time for a future discussion.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so circling back, yeah. So that's actually how I got into ST, right? I remember, if I'm gonna learn a game, what's gonna be like a game that's never gonna die out? And I thought Street Fighter 2 is so iconic, right? So I was like, okay, or Street Fighter in general, it's so iconic. So let's learn how to play Street Fighter. So I was thinking, okay, I remember, a few years ago, there was that platform. So I looked up GGPO again, and oh, look, they have more games than just Alpha 2 now. So I tried Alpha 2. It was okay. And the community still wasn't that big, but Street Fighter 2, man, there was so,
Turbo, right?
there was so many people in the Super Turbo room, and I grinded it out for so long and then when I started winning after like a year at least, then I started coming offline. Yeah, no, I didn't win a single game for at least a year. And then when I finally started to be able to beat some people, and then I started getting better, I'm like, okay. And then once I started, and online is not legit, but when I started being able to take rounds in games off of for example, Afro Legends and Ganon, then I'm like, okay, let's see if we can find, an offline community, and that's how I found you guys.
Yeah. I think actually the first time I ever played you was online.
Really?
I remember this. Yeah, I remember this distinctly. I think it was like I hopped online and you challenged me, or I challenged you. I think it was you challenged me, and I'll get into why I distinctly remember this.
Okay.
And so I picked Dictator, and of course you were playing Chun-Li, and you beat me. You beat me pretty good, right?
Okay.
And yeah, so and I kind of nothing came after that, and then I remember this because you came offline. You played Chun-Li against me offline against my Dictator,
and I didn't win a single game.
or I think, or at the very least, it was like, oh, he's trying this online stuff. And then I was like, I had to remember. It's like, what do I do offline to counter it? Because I had the counters in like the back of my head, but I hardly ever had to use them.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, so you kind of start forgetting things. And then I was like, okay, I have to show this guy. It's like, why this doesn't work offline. So I was like, oh, jump up roundhouse. So that was, and this was like how we kind of got into this our little inside joke. It's like, what's the Dictator Chun matchup? That's why I
Really?
remember that distinctly. Yeah.
I don't even I didn't even realize we played online. I do remember the first time I met you was, again, I was looking for offline tournaments and ANC ran their little thing. And you were like my first casual match offline. and and yeah, and like we were playing for a little bit, and then I think we finished the set. You stood up, and some guy, I don't remember who it was, he was like, "You're here. I want my money back." And I was like, "Oh man, am I playing against one of the best players?" And I absolutely was. I was like, "Oh wow." He's that good, huh? I don't feel so bad for being beat up.
Thank you. I'm glad someone thinks. I'm glad at least one person thought I was good.
Yeah, no, it was like, "You're here. I want my money back." Yeah. So that was actually pretty awesome. Yeah. So Street Fighter 4 killed Street Fighter 2 completely. So that's when I got my arcade board to try and revive the scene.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that since we're segueing into more of your history. By the way, it's like so you got the board at around Street Fighter 4 era. Like, do you remember the exact what do you remember the impetus of getting a arcade board? Because the only times I ever had arcade boards was when I tried to kind of promote Super Turbo and to a lesser extent Alpha 3, and of course no one played those games in Toronto. Again, back in 2000, 2010, and eventually I kind of had to sell them. Like, it was what it was. But yeah, like what motivated you to get an arcade board
Well,
and yeah, get yourself a super gun?
I mean,
Basically.
Brett Cave and I,
Right.
yeah, and like Brett Cave, I got to do an interview with Brett one day. Brett Cave, you were playing on like that Xbox emulator, right? And that was probably the best that we had. And it's still, even with you guys, still so many meetups before I could even win the game. Before I could even win the game, the tournament was a little bit different because the tournament had scrubs. But like you, Josh, Farid, Brett, man, I couldn't win a single game for so long. But I love playing. And people always complain about input lag. The Xbox kind of lags a little bit sometimes. Like there was that freezing occasionally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
I didn't know that much about lag problems with Xbox because I usually associate lag with input lag specifically with PS3.
yeah, the input lag.
PS3, it's built into the hardware.
But I wasn't that good enough to notice input lag back then. But there was sort of like the freezing that happened occasionally, and that we would eat our input sometimes. It was jarring to me visually when that happened. But the main reason why I got the arcade board was I was trying to revive the community, right? With Street Fighter 4, nobody's gonna pay attention to Street Fighter 2,
Oh yeah, for sure.
right? Even HDR, nobody really cares, right? Like you see HDR, like okay, whatever. That was like a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks that Street Fighter 4 came out so soon.
Well, I mean, shout outs to Street Fighter 4. I mean,
Yeah.
like it turned out to be a really good game. I mean,
No, it's like
Street
it's
Fighter 5.
it's not good. Looking back, Street Fighter 4 is a good game. No, but back then, Street Fighter 4 wasn't great, but it was decent. Like I didn't hate it, right? And it was fun. And I loved discovering things in Street Fighter 4. But yeah, nobody was gonna notice Street Fighter 2, so I need to find a way, some way for people to know Street Fighter 2. So I was thinking, and actually, the CPS2 board, for people who haven't seen it, it's not like the old school like CPS1 or other older like non-JAMA games where it's just like a bare PCB. It had a case,
Yeah.
right? It has a nice case. It's enclosed. So I was and it looks very like nobody's seen one before. Like of course people have seen it, but like the general population haven't seen an arcade board, right? They've seen an arcade machine, they've never seen a board. So I just figured that was a good way to get people's attention, right?
The novelty factor. It's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it absolutely worked. People, came by, right? They didn't really care about Street Fighter 2, but they sort of did because it's Street Fighter 2, because everybody knows Street Fighter 2. But they were really interested, like, what the heck are you playing on? And we start the conversation, and some people have dabbled in Street Fighter 2, some people have never played it, and yeah, it's a way to get people playing, get people talking, get people tried out. That was the main reason why I got the Super Gun.
Nice.
The input lag and whatever, all just a bonus, right? But yeah, it was basically a way to just get the conversation going, get people interested, invite people, and because of that, I sort of became sort of like a leader. So I really wanted to set the tone for like the community to like be inclusive, right? Not be like elitist, right? Everybody's welcome, right? Always be encouraging if people are losing, teach them stuff. So I really tried my best to sort of keep that environment going and to encourage people to treat other people that way. And I always set an example, right? Even if we were doing rounds, normally normally if you're doing rotations, the new person lines up at the end, right? But I try to change that up. You're new, right? You never played the game. We want to encourage you playing. We've been playing all day already. So if you're new, just jump in now and then you'll rotate afterwards.
Yeah, and I think to an extent, well, not, I shouldn't even say to an extent, like we've seen where that led to, because you actually organized the first big Canada Cup.
Yeah.
With including ST that had ST as, say, one of the.
Yeah, and I was also responsible for helping Jimmy Bones play his first tournament in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because of the first tournament of Legends. Yeah, thanks to because I was a broke college student, right? I saved up so much just to get the CPS2 board, and for the plane tickets I had ANC sponsored a little bit. Vince from Hamilton helped out.
Yeah.
Montreal didn't help out, and they ended up winning the ticket. But
they're probably too busy playing online and prepping anyway.
And they were saying the ST community is actually pretty dead in Montreal too, so they didn't feel like it would. And then only Jimmy Bones and Thello came then. So
yeah.
But yeah, like I met them because I was going to Montreal and I found their IRC back then, and I met up with Jimmy Bones. I met Thello, and I played Sung a little bit. That's how I met Sung.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I brought that the TOL2, the Canadian qualifier with the help of Kuropi.
Yeah,
and
because if you hadn't gotten in touch with Kuropi, Bob Painter, for people who don't know, like that connection wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
That TOL2 connection wouldn't have happened at all.
Absolutely, and at that time I had a pretty decent tournament like legacy going, right? I had almost monthly meetups. Maybe every few months we'd have a tournament. And we would sort of spread that apart to get as much people as we can.
Yeah,
I think leading up to the qualifier, we had we went from 8 people to about 10 people, 20 people, and I think the number for that qualifier was around 45. And then
that's a pretty decent sized turnout.
Yeah, and I remember people were joking because it was some modern game that we beat out in terms of numbers that tournament. I don't remember what game it was. It was some crappy modern game. They were like, "You guys got more people than X game," and we were all laughing so hard. And then, a couple of
turning point, retro gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
as we know it, retro gaming.
Yeah, and then a couple of years later, the Canada Cup, the first time Canada Cup, and my connection with Vince, because I always headed over to Hamilton because Vince had an occasional monthly tournament and he wanted ST.
Yeah.
Right. So building those connections, and I will still support Vince. whenever I can on his online tournaments, or if he holds a tournament in Hamilton and he asks me if I can make it, I will help him. He's helped me so much, so I wanna help him as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Shout outs to Vince, RXS, or as he was known as RXS back in the day, SRK days. Because yeah, it's like that kind of inclusive atmosphere. It's like, if enough people, if you have enough people, or if you just want to run a game, right? Not even like to heck with checking whether you've got the numbers. Just throw a game out there and see how much people you draw to it.
yeah, absolutely.
That was how. That was how he approached Super Turbo, and he didn't. I don't think he's ever called it like a side game status, like that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like he's never taken that approach when including games in his tournament lineup.
Mm-hmm. And Vince was my connection to Canada Cup. Vince came to me and said, I said, I want you to help. I want you to run ST at Canada Cup. Do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, of course. It's Canada Cup. It's the first year Canada Cup in Toronto. Why would I not want to run ST there? Yeah. So that was a blast.
Yeah, and also like you, while we're on the subject, like your efforts in just connecting with people, just going out there, which unfortunately was something I couldn't really ever do, because I was like by the time you came into the scene, like I was kind of contemplating just stop playing the game. So, and I never really traveled, if at all. Like, I mean, you had Josh and Brett going to Evos and for HDR and things like that, and so they got to go out and see what the real competition was like. But you know, when you're a guy trying to make a living, and like it was kind of like that, you're starting to turn that corner, like life takes over. So I was at that point, and then you came along, and you were, because you were the one who went to a tournament. And you talked to Snake Eyes, and I think somehow, and from that you got Snake Eyes to join the game.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then somehow you were able to get in touch with Alex Valle and got him to join the tournament.
No, I didn't. No, he just came by himself. I did not get in touch with him at all.
Oh damn!
That was he just by himself. Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Valle.
Yeah. No. Snake Eyes was really cool. So I was running like Marvel brackets and Street Fighter 4 brackets at Summer Jam 9. And you know, I ran like Problem X's bracket in one of the games. I didn't know who Problem X was. I didn't follow modern games at the time. I still don't. I mean,
just like handled logistics, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Like when I played Street Fighter 4, I followed Street Fighter 4, but then I dropped it at one point because his exams came in. And then Super came out, and that was still pretty good, but then it sort of went downhill from there, and I didn't really like the Street Fighter 4s after that, so I just dropped the game. I loved vanilla Marvel 3. I didn't like the Ultimate at all. The nerfs to the buff to X Factor, and then the nerfs to like projectiles in the air and the zoning. I don't like it at all. Like I always say, they kept advertising it as, you know, this crazy, stupid, broken game, right? And that was the whole thing before it came out. And then he accomplished it. It was awesome. It was stupid. It was broken. And then he just toned it back down afterwards. I'm like, oh, like pulling away the super and stuff. And man, and the first month Sentinel nerf. What the heck?
Yeah. Well, I think, and again, like the idea of patches or like.
Yeah.
Nerfs.
Yeah. I didn't like that.
Catering to, shall we say, player requests.
Like, like
very early on in a game's life cycle. That's probably another discussion we can have for somewhere down the line.
Yeah, like ST. I've taken breaks from ST. If I take a break from ST, I can come back. I don't have to relearn anything. Right? I take a break from Street Fighter 4 because of exams. And there are like 2 rounds of patches that I have to learn about now.
Right.
Right? And my character plays a little bit different now too. Like you can't. I felt like I couldn't make progress. Right? I had to always stay on it. Like I couldn't live life and be good at that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know, like school takes priority, right? Like I wasn't gonna grind it out during exam time.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like I said, we can have this discussion for another podcast, but just to briefly touch on that point, like when you think about it, it's that idea isn't actually too far removed from the idea. You know how like Street Fighter 2 had, first of all, like Street Fighter 2, the original Street Fighter 2 had multiple versions.
It did.
Because they were patching out bugs, taking out redizzies, that kind of thing, things like that. And then of course you had the upgrades like Champion, Hyper Fighting, Super, ST.
Yeah, I actually had an idea for one of the episodes. It was like fighting game myths, and that there weren't patches back in the day, and that's absolutely false. And yeah, so that is something I want to go into in a future episode, like just sort of fighting game myths, and the fact that old games weren't patched is definitely one of those myths.
Yeah, for sure, sure. But yeah, and again, but back to I suppose now we're on Unessential's history now. So back to that. So yeah, like you could see in terms of Toronto ST, we can still kind of see like what the results of or what you've built since you got the board, right? Like even though it's kind of I'd say our community is kind of on hold because of pandemic and everything else. Like we've at least still kind of maintained that small core group of players, like me, you, Josh, even though he's kind of off working now, and again, pandemic. Pestro, Oz. Oz was one of the first players that came through after you got the board.
Yeah.
Back then, it was like me, you, Jed, Brett.
Yep.
Then we had a couple of people who played with us on and off, like Enzo. Shout out to Enzo. And then Oz was the next kind of guy to really join and then put time and work into the game, and look where he is now.
Yeah, and there's also people outside of Toronto, right? Like Steven and all of them. It just sucks for them because they have to travel so far. Like I'm sure if they lived close by, they would get so much better so fast. But it's difficult living on the sticks sometimes.
Yeah, but he has at least he has HDR if he can find players to play on that platform still.
But it's different. It's different online. Like my learning, like what I've learned about the game, just rose exponentially once I came offline with you guys. Like having live feedback is so helpful compared to like online chatting when the game is over, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know, like on Fightcade, can you see the replays as you're still logged in on the chat, or can you not do that?
No, not really.
Okay, right. Yeah, and you can never, and like I feel like with Fightcade, like a lot of the times it really is just like back in the arcade culture. Like you just have to play and win.
Yeah.
Try to remember what you did wrong or what you did right. And then just make adjustments.
And that's the thing. Nobody gets good at Street Fighter by themselves, right? And it really is like you have all you need is a decent game. You don't need a great game. You need a decent game, but it's mostly the community, right? If a game doesn't have a community.
Yeah, like that's why Fightcade is so good for that. Like you have that community, players from New York, East Coast, West Coast, Mexico, even South America, and then on the odd time you even get a good Japanese connection, and you can play players from Japan, New York, West Coast USA, et cetera, and because nowadays with Super Turbo, at least it's just people who want to play the game and win, and so you can get matched up with like West Coast Chuns, East Coast Chuns, Geefs. Like you get to play all the matchups outside of, say, like what your possibly limited like local competition can provide you. And to me as a whole, the thing that's good about the Super Turbo scene now is that like most people are pretty welcoming.
Yeah.
Like they'll just like teach you stuff, show you the ropes, like the great ST discords that are run by guys like Go-Kart Jack, like for the European Discord, that kind of thing. Like most people are pretty welcoming. They'll show you the ropes, give you pointers, tell you what you did wrong and say, no, you shouldn't do this in like situation X, situation Y, et cetera, et cetera. So, and yeah, and it wasn't always like that for a lot of scenes. Because, I mean, like, I don't want to get into any personal history, but I'll just say this, like it wasn't always like that back in the day in the community.
Right. Well, I mean, you can speak about it. I just want to include it. To ask about your thoughts on Atari. Let's do it.
Well, I mean, I'll give him this. How much time do I have?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good in terms of time for tonight, so
okay.
So I can go on for quite a bit.
Okay, good. Let's start episode 2 then.